It's John, the conspiracy theorist, but John is not his real name. It's John, the conspiracy theorist, but John is just a fake name.
Damn thing. Damn, okay. What? What did you say, Mr. Montgomery? Oh, are there people here? Well, hello. How are you? How did you get in here? Well, 2 more words. You just have to wait. These things don't work. Oh, there we go. Now, I'm done with my report. That's right. I'm done with my report. I better put this on. You can never be too sure. Do you know why I have these on? That's lined with lead. Do you know I have this on? I've also lined this with lead, but I don't want to walk around with that all the time. That's pretty conspicuous. So I decided that I'd get a hat which was less conspicuous, so I could blend in a little bit more easily. And do you know what I'm talking about? Well, I shouldn't really tell you because, well, I'm going to tell you because I finished the report, and if something happens to me and I disappear, then you're going to have to spread the information about what's actually really going on. Why am I wearing these blue glasses? I don't like them but I don't want to take them off right now. I'll take them off in a minute. But I'm wearing them because it makes it harder for them to use their cameras to see what my eye expressions are, because this refracts the sort of the color of the spectrum, which makes it harder for them to see what I'm thinking. But anyway, so here's what I'm going to tell you. What's going on? It's information that you have to know. You have to know it. It's called nanites. That's right. Do you see the water trucks that go around in your neighborhoods? Do you know what's actually going on? Do you see the water trucks going around in your neighborhoods? I'll tell you what's going on. They're water trucks, but do you know what they're putting in the water trucks? In the water? They're putting nanites in it. Nanites. Small, little, tiny computers. Microscopic. They've got it from alien technology. They've had it for years. Alien technology. That's what's in the report. I'm going to send it to the media, but I suspect I'll disappear. That's why I'm telling you, since you showed up anyway. And so what they're doing is they're putting the nanites in there, and the nanites are smaller than your blood cells. So what they do is they're programmed to lodge into your blood cells. And do you know what happens then? The nanites go all over your bloodstream, all over, and particularly they rest in the brain. That's right, they rest in the brain. And then your government, all governments, it's a huge conspiracy driven by aliens, but all the governments are sending out signals from satellites using alien technology to stimulate and control behavior of people on Earth through nanites in the water. You probably didn't know this. It's all in the report. I have it right here. You probably didn't know that, but that's what's going on. And so that's why I've already been infected with nanites. And if you're going to drink, number one, don't use your phone. You need to get an old analog phone. Don't use your phone. Those things. Have you ever noticed how when you start talking about something? Oh no, I dropped my report. Have you ever noticed that when you start talking about something, a day or two later, your phone picks it up and you get sort of advertisements for that product that you mentioned but you've never searched for? Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. They listen to you. They listen to you. And this can't listen to anything. It's analog. That's right. So get a phone. You can't really carry it. Well, you could, but it's not very helpful to carry it around with you, but that's the thing. And you have to get one of these to protect yourself. I have this one lined with lithium. It's a metal. They use it in some medications, but it's good for other things too. I have it lined with lithium. The nanites have a hard time living in a lithium-rich environment. Well, they're not really alive, but you know what I mean. They don't really work that well. And they mess up and they're hard to program. But all of you are going to have nanites in your system now, so what you're going to have to do is I don't really even want to take it off. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get one of these hats. Be inconspicuous like this one. Nobody even thinks about it when you wear a hat like this. So you put lead in it. That's right. It's a harder time for the satellites using alien technology to send signals to your brain and control you. And they want you to buy things, mostly. But that's only until they get enough money that they can take over completely. So, yes, these big companies with online sales and stuff and advertisements, well, that's exactly what's going on. It's the start of the downfall of the human race. It's all in the report. All in the report. Go in the media. Remember, you heard about it here first. So, Mr. Montgomery, he's helping me today in my TOK lesson about the presentation. I'm going to take off those silly glasses. The silly hat you're going to have to bear with. I wonder if Mr. Montgomery would like some glasses. Want some glasses, Mr. Montgomery? Wow, look at that, see? Now, Mr. Montgomery's looking pretty dapper there with some glasses on. Looking good, Mr. Montgomery. They're a little bit lopsided, but so is your face, buddy. There you go. All right, whatever. He's looking over the top of his glasses like he's reading a book. I think he's getting older and he's having to have to do that thing to read. But anyway, you guys, hello, welcome. Today, I'm going to talk about the presentation. I've talked about all the topics. I've talked about a bunch of TOK stuff. I'm still filming religion things. But it's time we're moving into the presentation, and so you guys need to know about the presentation. And so I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to do some do's and don'ts on the presentation. As you see, I don't have the screen here today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit it and put the things up when I'm talking about them. Instead of using the screen, just wanted to test that one out. But nevertheless, guys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the presentation, then I'm going to go through the PPD. That's the form that you have to fill out. It's called the Presentation Planning Document. The Presentation Planning Document, the PPD. That's a form that everybody needs to fill out for the presentation, okay? We'll talk about both of those, and then we're going to take a brief look at good and bad KQ. We're going to do knowledge questions, that's what it is. We're going to do just a very brief look in this filming, but we are going to have a lesson in particular, actually on Monday. I don't know when we'll see this film, but whatever the case is, very soon. It's Monday my time, this is Friday. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, to everybody in the world, whether you celebrate it or not. And anyway, so yes, I'm going to get into it. But we're going to do that lesson on Monday in my class. Okay, but anyway, so a presentation is a presentation that examines knowledge construction or knowledge manipulation in a real life situation. Okay, let me say that again. It examines knowledge construction or knowledge manipulation in a real life situation. It's a TOK presentation. Okay, and like everything TOK focuses on knowledge construction. And you need to, what the intention of the presentation always has been. The intention was to take your experiences and the things that you've learned at TOK and to be able to apply it to a real life situation and to analyze it through a TOK lens. To be able to show that you are able to step outside of the classroom and adapt TOK thinking to real life events. It's also a way, less specifically, to kind of open your eyes to the way knowledge is manipulated and constructed in society around us, so you can take those lessons with you as you go on in your life, which is important because there's a lot of BS everywhere we look, and it's getting more and more and more and more and more as more and more and more and more people have access to social media and YouTube and whatnot. Okay, because we have a lot less of an ability to have things filtered, and so it makes it easier to believe in conspiracy theories like, you know, nanites using alien technology to control human beings. And so anyway, you guys, so that's kind of what the presentation is about. Now, what is a good real life situation? You have to pick a real life situation. It needs to be specific. It can't be anything vague like soccer. Can I do one on soccer? I've had that question. Football. It was when I was in Sweden. Can I do one on football? I'm like, well, what specifically? Oh, I don't know. You have to have a specific real life situation. And what you need to do to get your real life situation is you need to look around and look for something that the knowledge in the situation is called into question. Okay? Like the knowledge in the situation is called into question. Let's take something currently going on in the United States. And not giving I'm making no political comments whatsoever. But Trump is claiming that the election is a fraud, and everybody else is pretty much claiming that the election is not a fraud. So how do I know as a knower? How do we know if the election is a fraud? Or how is media knowledge manipulated to perpetuate the idea of an election fraud? How is media portraying different sides of this debate? How is that doing? What language are they using? What emotional sort of connotations are they using? What are they choosing to report? What are they choosing not to report? How is our knowledge being manipulated by the media in the current public events? There's one. What's another good one? Let's say that we have the events going on currently in, it's actually quite in the forefront again because it's a long historical fight, but let's say the Turkish-Armenian genocide war debate around World War I. The Turks apparently killed a whole bunch of Armenians. Okay, I say apparently, I wasn't there, but that's all the narrative of the story. And so they killed a whole bunch of Armenians. The Armenians say this was a form of genocide. The Turks say no, this was just normal warfare. The European Union has sided with the Armenians. Other people have sided with the Turks. And so how do we know if it was a genocide or not? How do we know? I mean, now, and it's not necessarily how do we know, but how is the knowledge created for the different sides? I mean, what historical documents are used to support the claim it was a genocide? What historical documents are used to claim it was not a genocide, it was warfare? How does the Turkish side manipulate their side of the story? How does the Armenian side manipulate their side of the story? How is the knowledge created? And it's different perspectives on it. Okay, those are the kinds of things which are good TOK topics. There's a whole bunch of them. I could stand for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, 2 hours talking about feasible topics. But the idea is not for me to give you a topic. The idea is for you to find one. Nanking Massacre is another one. Every country, the India and Pakistan conflict in the Kashmir, there's another one. There's a whole bunch of them all over the world. It doesn't have to be a sort of conflict either. It could be, just all kinds of stuff. How about, different sort of scientific discoveries where there's a debate? How about like the vaccine thing going on around the world? Speaking of vaccines, hope we get one soon. The vaccine thing going on around the world about the measles, mumps vaccine, where people don't want it because they say it causes autism and whatnot. Well, how is that knowledge created? So those are all kinds of things, but I'm not gonna talk any more about those because it would take forever, and you get the idea. And like I said in class, just ask me if you wonder if it's a good topic or not. Okay, do not do this though. Now you need a knowledge question. Okay, a knowledge question. That I'm gonna put one up here, which would be a good one. In which ways does media language influence the perception of the use of force by the police? Okay. How does media language? Now we've had this debate a lot recently in the United States in particular, but also in other parts of the world about the use of force by the police and whether it's justified, whether it's racist, whether it's whatever it is. Okay, and again, taking no political sides, but it's a debate in there. And some people say no, it's normal use of force. Some people say no, it's racism, and But how does the media manipulate that knowledge? I mean, does the media, for instance, overrepresent when force has been used against, for instance, black people as opposed to white people? Does it overrepresent that to get the media clicks? Or is it manipulated another way by another media to make people believe that it's just justified police force? Do they use a type of language? Now, you see what I mean? Now, you need a knowledge question that needs to focus your inquiry on knowledge manipulation or knowledge construction. Now, I have graded these presentations for 15 years. I've moderated these presentations for 15 years. I have seen so many of them. So many of them. And if you do not have a good KQ, I could say probably a 90% correlation. If you do not have a good KQ, you will not acknowledge question. You will not have a good presentation. Now, this is, I have graded many, and I have dropped the grades on them. The teacher would, for instance, give them a 9, and I would drop them to a 1 or a 2. Why? And you do not want this happening to you. You do not want this happening to you, okay? Not only that, it ends up dropping for the whole cohort. If your teacher is unjustifiably high in the marks, they'll drop the whole cohort from, 5 points. It happens all the time, constantly. And there's a reason for this. It's because the KQs are not good and the presentations subsequently are not TOK presentations. They're ethical debates, social ethical quandaries, reports, okay? Now, I'm going to get into this in just a second, but TOK presentations are not about talking about the ethicality of something. Now you can say, how do I know it's ethical to have an abortion? Or how do I know it's unethical to have an abortion? And you could conceivably have a debate about that, not a debate, wrong word. You could conceivably have a presentation which is focused on how different people create their knowledge and different perspectives. That could conceivably work, yes. But to stand and give a presentation, say it's unethical for these reasons, it's ethical for these reasons, then that's not a TOK presentation, and it deserves a super low grade, maybe even a 0, because it is not TOK. Do not have this is ethical, this is unethical, ethical debate. Do not do that, because your grade will be low. I cannot emphasize it enough. It is the #1 problem for TOK presentations. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but presentations are going away. This is the last year, the last this May session and then the November session of 2021, presentations are gone. They're going to have something called an exhibit. I'm not even going to get into that at all right now because it won't matter for you guys anyway, because you'll be graduated by then. So, but it's gone, and there's some particular reasons that it is gone, and I'm going to talk about that when I talk about the PPD, okay? Now, it is a good idea in your KQ to include some of the things that are TOK topics that you will be talking about. Like the one I just gave, I can put it up again real quick. In what ways does media language influence the perception of the use of force by the police? So how does media language influence the perception of things? You see, these are TOK topics. So it's a good way to construct it doesn't have to be that way. But if you want a good, well-focused KQ, then it's good to throw those into the KQ so you kind of know for yourself what you're doing. It's kind of like creating the thesis in the TOK essay and a good outline introduction, or a good sort of roadmap introduction that like at least informs you of what you're going after, okay? So those are the things. Once again, the most important thing, pick a good KQ that talks about knowledge construction and knowledge manipulation. You have to do it. A good RLS, which has that debate possible. Do not pick an ethical thing. Do not do it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't conceivably talk about ethics in it, but it is not an ethical debate. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's the #1 mistake people make around the world. I've graded from all over the world, and for many years, and it is the absolute #1 mistake. There's some others that are really high too, but anyway, so okay. All right, now let's go to the PPD. What is a PPD? The PPD means Presentation Planning Document. How you doing over there, by the way? Mr. Montgomery, you sitting there? You need something to read for now? Here, I feel sorry for Mr. Montgomery. The last time I had Mr. Montgomery on stage was, I think, he met a vampire and he met a ghoul. Not a vampire, what I'm saying. He met not my fault you don't have any hands, Mr. Montgomery. Don't get all uptight. But anyway, so Yeah, he met a ghoul and a werewolf. He ended badly for him all three films. But anyway, you guys, okay? So the PPD, it is called the Presentation Planning Document. This is the form that you fill out after, well, you're supposed to fill it out before, revise. But anyway, you fill out during your presentation. Now, your presentation is the internal assessment. Your presentation for TOK gets 30%, 33% of the grade, and your essay gets the other 2/3 of the grade, okay? All right. And so now, it's an internal assessment. In every other IB subject, when you do an internal assessment in them, in every other IB subject that you do an internal assessment in, what happens is there's a moderation sample. So let's say there's 30 kids in the class. The IB, the teacher puts in the grades for the internal assessment, and the IB program, called IBIS, but anyway, the IB program, it selects a moderation sample. And it's not a random sample, it's low grades, low mid grades, mid high grades, and high grades. So they take a sampling across the spectrum of the grades, and your coordinator will take those samples and they will send them to they'll send them to a system. But anyway, they end up in the hands of an examiner. And the examiner looks at those internal assessments and they say, okay, the teacher was spot on with the grades, or the teacher was too high with the grades, and the teacher was too low with the grades, or whatever the case is. On the basis of that sample, then the cohort, the entire class can have the grade raised a little bit, lowered a little bit, whatnot, okay? And so it's a moderation sample, because otherwise, I mean, the IB needs to take a look at the things that are being done in every corner of the earth. And so that's the only way that it can work. Now, the thing is, though, is the difference with TOK is that in all the other subjects, they're actually getting a real-life sample of student work. In the presentation, the examiners, the moderators are not getting a sample of the presentation. They are getting the paper about the presentation. And this is a problem, and this is one of the major reasons that the presentation is disappearing, because there's not a fair way to moderate it. That does nothing for your class now. You're still doing a presentation. You're still using a PPD. The thing is, you have to fill it out properly, because that PPD, the paper about your presentation, is the only thing the moderators will get on a basis to judge your grade. So, you do an excellent presentation. Let's say it's the best presentation in the world. You are lazy about your PPD. You've put in, we talked about knowledge, and sent it off. Your grade just dropped from 9 that the teacher gave it to a 1 or 2. That is how serious the PPD is. So do not, in any way, shape, or form, think this PPD is nothing but a sort of nonsensical piece of busy work. That's the number 2 problem, that students do not fill out the PPD properly. They don't give enough information to show how a TOK presentation took place. Remember, you have to make sure you're explaining how your TOK presentation took place on that PPD to show how knowledge was, and so on and so forth, okay? That's important. It is so important. I cannot emphasize this enough. It is so important. Because when I get papers, and this is all examiners, moderators, when they get these PPDs and they grade them, the teacher sometimes will put stuff at the bottom, and they'll say, yeah, it was a good presentation with like a little bit of detail, and it'll give the student like a 7 or 8 or something, and the student hasn't filled out anything. The student's put like a couple words: history, language, perception. That tells me nothing. So the grade drops, boom, 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 again and again and again, thousands of times in my career. Okay? So, make sure you fill out the PPD properly. So we're going to look at that a little more briefly, then I'll be done with this, and we'll look at a couple good and bad. I'll have Mr. Montgomery help me with that. He's over there studying them right now. Good and bad KQ, just to kind of sum this one out. So, anyway, in the presentation, it's a form. It starts out, it says your real life situation up top. I can probably stick one. I'll see if I can stick an example of I'm not sure if I probably can. I'll see if I can find one to put up there. Just briefly, so you can kind of see how they look. But your teacher, well, maybe I will show you them and we will go over them in class. I know other people have now been, which is cool, which I'm really happy about. Other people around the world have been watching these videos, and that's really, really awesome. And it's really fun. You got to ask your teacher to see the PPD. Okay, I think you can also find them, but just ask your teacher. If you guys use ManageBack, you can use a system on ManageBack that actually auto-generates a PPD, but I don't, who knows if anybody else has it. But we use that. Anyway, so, okay. So there's this plate, it says real life situation, explanation up top, it says your knowledge question, then it says an explanation, a connection between the knowledge question and the real life situation, then there's an outline, and then there's a conclusion section, okay? They're all important. You get 500 words to use to fill out the thing. So make sure to make a clear connection. So do not write more than one KQ, first of all. You gotta get a good real life situation. Just explain it very, very briefly up top. Briefly. What it is, basically. That part's, you know, that part's just, it's just a thing to say what you're doing. Okay? Then you have your KQ coming up. Do not write more than one KQ. It says write one KQ. I don't know why so many people around the world think one means more than one. It is not more than one. It's one. One. Write one KQ, not 4. Okay, serious. You would be baffled of how many people write more than one KQ when it says one KQ. Write one. Okay. Make sure to make a clear connection in the explanation. So how does your real life situation and the KQ go together? Sometimes it's apparent. I mean, what's the relationship? Sometimes it's apparent and obvious. Sometimes it isn't. Make that connection. That means you know what the connection is too. Okay, make the connection in the outline. Okay? The outline is a section, and this is a very important section for your grade. Very important. This is where you show what your presentation was about. An outline. Now, we kind of need a better word in English, because outline can mean different things. An outline could be the bullet point, like history, authority, faith, consensus, language, whatever, emotion, you know, whatever. You can kind of see that as an outline for yourself, and you might know what you're talking about, but that kind of outline is not outlining something. Outlining something is giving the basics, but enough detail to make it clear what you did. You've got to just keep that in mind. Will somebody who is not you understand what you just did? If the answer is no, you got a bad grade. Hands down. No doubt about it. You've got to, now it can't be massive detail, it's only 500 words, but you've got to explain what you did. Did you focus on how language is manipulated by the media to show different perspectives of how force is being used in the police force? Explain that. Showed how Fox News, or showed how CNN focuses on the suffering aspect a lot more than Fox, which focuses on the crime committed. You know, I don't know if that's the case, I'm just making those up. But you see what I mean. You have to say what you did. If you talked about memory, then talk about memory, how it manipulated knowledge. If you're going to talk about authority, religious authority determining ethicality, or something like that, what is ethical right, and using, for instance, the Vatican as a source or whatnot, well, then by all means explain how that process took place. There's a bazillion different possibilities. And they'll look different in your different communities and things like that. But, you know, and for me, you know, here in class, you guys, you got to ask me. I'm not gonna, you know, you can turn in whatever you like, but I'll ask you. I'm not gonna let you turn in some sort of crappy PPD. I'll say go fix it. And if you choose not to fix it, then whatever. But you know, most people want a good grade, so it's never really a problem. Okay, so those are the things. Do not make vague bullet points. Clarity is needed to show how knowledge or knowledge construction is in focus. Okay. And the conclusion. Make sure to have concluding thoughts about how knowledge is created in your RLS. It's a conclusion. It's not saying what you just did. It's kind of the so what moment. What did you come up with? What are the conclusions about knowledge? How has knowledge been manipulated? Okay? All right. Also in the conclusion, you need to, and this is really the only thing in the grading criteria that differentiates a level 4, which is up to an 8, and a level 5, which is an up to a 10. It's the only thing that differentiates is the fact that you've talked about how the same applies in different real life situations. You add it for a couple minutes, a few minutes at the end of your presentation. Now, the PPD is what you fill out, but all of these things I've been talking about you need to have in your presentation, right? I mean, the presentation was a representation of the PPD is a sort of written representation of the actual presentation. So the presentation has to have this stuff in it. I will emphasize that, but I think it's pretty clear. But anyway, so in the concluding thoughts about how your knowledge is created in your topic, and then also look at how it is, and you have to mention it specifically, how it is relevant in other real life situations. Now, there's some debate in the IB about can you award the high level grade without a mention of other RLS? According to the grading criteria, no. And there's a lot of people who interpret the grading criteria that way. No, if you don't have mention of your other RLS in there, you will not get a 9 or a 10. I'm not saying that is the correct way to do things, but it is something that happens. And it's not apt to change in this very last year of the presentation. So make sure you put it in there, okay? Okay, anyway. Okay, just a couple other things. Use the allotted space. You got 500 words, you better use them all. Don't be thinking you've got anything good there if you put 100 words in there and you're in a hurry and you don't feel like doing it and it's stupid. Don't, no, nuh-uh. You just gotta, all you're doing is kicking yourself. Okay? Do use the PPD to plan the presentation, but you absolutely must revise it before submission. Okay? Now, that's a little bit debatable. But, plan it. Use it as a planning document, but don't turn in an unpolished, crappy thing. Just don't do that. Fix it up at the end and make sure it's good, okay? Once again, do not ever forget your grade is moderated. Your moderated grade is based as what is written on the PPD. Your grade will be dropped if the PPD does not show how TOK analysis is taking place. I've already said that, but I'm going to emphasize it again. Do not skip any section of the PPD. Don't do it. Some people do it. Nah, I don't want to do that part. Okay, your grade just dropped. Okay? Do not expect, and this is a good one in the end. Your teacher makes comments at the end. The teacher comments are not intended to say what happened in the presentation. Okay? The teacher's comments are there for the teacher to justify their mark. And sadly, a lot of teachers don't do a very good job on it. But that's a different story altogether. But, if the PPD is good, even a poor teacher comments, you can still justify the grade. But you can never justify the grade, even with good teacher comments, if the PPD is absolutely hopeless. It's way important. Teacher comments is a different thing altogether. It's intended for the teacher to justify their grade by saying what happened in the presentation and why they gave what they gave. It's not intended to do your work for you. So don't think the teacher comments are going to save your grade if you do a crappy job on your PPD. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's super important. I hate seeing presentations that I have to drop from like a 9, which have been unjustifiably given a 9, and that hope has been given to that student or that class. I don't like doing it, but I can't give it a 9 if it's a crappy presentation. I can't do it. I won't do it. It will never happen because it doesn't deserve it. It was done wrong. And if it's done wrong on a level, at your school, well, then the teacher needs to figure out how to do them. Simple and straightforward as that, because they're doing a disservice to the class. But thankfully at our school, this is not the case. You guys always do quite well on the presentations and get good grades. So, anyway, you guys, so we're going to do one last thing before I end. I don't know how long I've been talking already. Hey, Mr. Montgomery, you ready to play a game? Me and Mr. Montgomery. I'm not gonna let any Google get old Mr. Montgomery now. Come over here, you. Hey, buddy, how you doing? All right, let's see. I'm gonna put these up here for your sake. Mr. Montgomery is gonna give me the answer. Okay? All right, Mr. Montgomery, here's a KQ. These are real ones. To what extent is abortion justified in the case of rape? Is that a good KQ or a bad KQ?
I think that's a very good KQ, to be honest.
Oh, Mr. Montgomery, you fluff for brain spare. No, that is a bad KQ. Don't you know anything? Have you been listening to me, Mr. Montgomery? Seriously. You're just sitting around looking cool all the time with those glasses on? That's a bad KQ. Why? Well, because it's not going to do anything about it except for discuss the ethicality of abortion. Okay? That's why. It's terrible. Okay, number 2. Okay, here, Mr. Montgomery. In what ways can religious belief hinder the propagation of artistic knowledge? In what way can religious belief hinder the propagation of artistic knowledge?
Oh, that one sounds very good to me.
Good job, Mr. Montgomery. Yes, it is a good one. Why is that a good one? Yeah, good job. Sorry I chastised you so much before. You still look stupid in those glasses, though. But anyway, so it's good because it's talking about knowledge manipulation or stopping knowledge, or how religious belief can hinder knowledge, basically. You know, I mean, you could think about there's a zillion of them. You know, a lot of religions have a lot of prohibitions on what you can do artistically. Like, for instance, in Islam, you can't depict human beings, and particularly not Muhammad. And so you know, there's all kinds of artistic knowledge which can't be explored. There's a lot of things that you could talk about. Okay, so let's look at another one. Remember, these are real ones. Why should you be good at math to be a programmer? What do you say, Mr. Montgomery?
Well, I really like that one. I think it's good.
No, Mr. Montgomery. Are you just going to say yes all the time? What's wrong with you? I'll let the nanite things get you. No, it's terrible. It's one of the worst ones I've ever seen in my career. Why should you be good at math to be a programmer? My goodness, it's horrid. There's no knowledge in there. It's like saying, well, you should be good at math. There's no knowledge issue in there. Okay? And one last one. How has faith and authority affected our knowledge of history?
I think that's an excellent one.
Yes, of course you're going to say it's good again. But yes, this one is good. It's not great. It's a little bit vague. It could be better. But with a good RLS, it's fine. Okay? Because it's talking about how your knowledge has been manipulated and so on and so forth. Okay? All right, so that'll be good for now. Give me those glasses back. All right, now remember, you have to get a lithium-laced plastic container for your water. You need a lead hat. You need to stop using electronic materials for your typing. Write your reports on an old machine that's not hooked up to anything. Get an analog phone, not a digital one. And remember, those trucks, water trucks going around in your neighborhood, they are not your friends. And I'm telling you, you'll know soon when people start doing a lot of really weird stuff all of a sudden. That means that people who are controlled by aliens are turning up the dial on the nanitometer thing. Yeah, that's right. You just mark my words. So, for now, I'm going to finish up my other report, and I'm going to get back to it. Now watch, this is what you have to do. Remember, this is what you have to do. Quickly, because they can't send signals. Like that. Oh, there we go. Safe and sound. Hey, Mr. Montgomery, can you give me some tea?